session. We've had about 110 people register, which is absolutely amazing. And this session will also be recorded and placed on the Scottish Perinatal Network website and their YouTube channel in case anybody couldn't manage today. My name's Michelle. I am an advanced neonatal practitioner at NHS Fife, and I had the great pleasure of listening to Professor Embleton do his speech during the Reason Conference in June, and just thought he was amazing, and he very kindly agreed to present to us again today. Professor Embleton is a consultant neonatal paediatrician working in NHS Newcastle, and he's got a wealth of knowledge and experience in neonates, and also has quite a broad research portfolio which includes end-of-life care and bereavement. And he's been heavily involved in the formulation of the Butterfly Project, which is the topic which we're going to feature today. Just before I hand over to Professor Embleton, I just want to make a few wee notes. So there is time to ask questions, so if you pop them in the chat section, then I will ask Professor Embleton the questions at the end of the session. And there's also a poll that's running in the background, if you wouldn't mind completing that, and again we'll discuss the results at the end of the presentation. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Professor Embleton.
Thanks very much, Michelle. I always get alarmed when people start calling me Professor. It's much easier when everyone just calls me Nick, and then I kind of know my place. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Now let me just make sure I can open up the right window and I don't start sharing my email with all of you. Right. Have I got full screen there?
Yep, I can see your presentation.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so thanks very much to Michelle for inviting me and organising the meeting today. And thank you to all of you for joining in to the webinar. So I am a neonatal consultant in Newcastle, just south of Scotland. We often wish we were part of Scotland, not part of England and all the London mafia, but unfortunately we're not. And this is a project that I've been involved in now for around about 15 years. And it's really changed the way that I think I practice neonatology. I'm going to speak for just about half an hour or a little bit longer. It'd be great to have some discussion, just hear your thoughts at the end of it. I can make all as Michelle said, she's going to record the presentation. But you'll see that we've got a website where you can go and watch the videos, and we've also got an online learning course that you can do on the project as well, which includes a lot more information that I'm going to present to you today. Right. So the focus today is the Butterfly Project, which is specifically talking about the loss of a baby from a multiple pregnancy. This is based on qualitative research that we conducted with bereaved parents, but also lots of staff, including nurses and ultrasonographers. When we talk about co-twin baby loss, we mean babies who may have died either in a miscarriage, a stillbirth, or a neonatal death. This would also include triplets and higher order pregnancies. And from our research, we developed guidelines and teaching sessions that we co-produced with parents and other members of staff. We were able to get a film producer to do some film with parents, and then, as I say, we've created what's called a massive open online course, which means that you can do it for free if you go through the NHS portal, and I'll show you how to get into that at the end of the course. So all of this is called the Butterfly Project. So where did it all come from? Well, about 15 years ago, I started working with some sociologists and some qualitative researchers. And the focus of our first project was on withdrawal of active intensive care. So we wanted to speak to parents who have been involved in decisions about limiting further active intensive care. And it was really during that first project that we recognised the importance and the confusion perhaps around how to handle and support parents who've suffered a co-twin loss. So that led on to the second project, which I'm going to talk to you about today, but we've also done lots of other work with parents. So particularly a couple of years back, we spoke to lots of parents about how they felt about being approached to join more than one research study. And all of this work really is just aiming to help staff understanding of the parent perspective. And we want to educate, inform, and obviously improve the outcomes, not just for the parents, but also for us as staff and families. Now, if you look at the written literature in sort of neonatology in this kind of subject area, you see a lot written about the practical aspects. You know, how are we supposed to practice good neonatal care? How do we communicate? How do we express empathy? There's quite a lot written and talked about the ethics, the morals, the rights of the baby, the rights of the parents, autonomy, self-determination, these aspects. But when you step back and think about it, really these two broad areas of study fit within the whole of life, where we need to think about, you know, how does neonatology fit into our normal social relationships? And this includes aspects of expectations. What do we expect to do when we work on a neonatal unit, and what do parents and the public expect us to deliver? It's about journeys. How do you move as a parent of a baby where you expect everything to be normal into the neonatal unit and beyond? And how do you cope with anniversaries if your baby died? And how do your friends deal with this? And then also, what's it like for us as professionals? Do we identify ourselves by the job that we do? We all have work friends that we're quite close to and mean a lot, and how might these differ from friends outside of work? And particularly, a lot of this is about feelings. And nobody is more surprised than I am that I became interested as an academic in people's feelings. I never went into neonatology because I was interested in parents or professionals' feelings about what it all meant. I went into it because it was exciting to look after complex babies. But since doing these projects, it really has made me reflect on what it all means. How does it make the parents feel? How does it make us feel as carers and professionals? And when we were thinking about withdrawal of active intensive care, a whole series of kind of questions and topics arose. As I say, we were focusing very much on parents' feelings and experiences, but this made me question my own identity. I mean, am I my job? Am I a neonatologist, or am I a father, or what am I? Why do I get more upset about some babies than others? I've looked after thousands of babies and sadly hundreds of babies who've died in my career. Why did some babies' deaths affect me much more profoundly than others? What does it feel like to be the nurse or the doctor when you sit with parents of a baby where you've agreed to discontinue intensive care, and you take the ET tube out and you watch the baby die and you comfort and you stay with the parents? Clearly a very, very emotional episode. How do we do that and then walk out the room and then just go and order chips for lunch? And how much emotion should I express? Is it okay for me to appear sad? What would people think if, as a kind of older male neonatologist, I shed a tear? Would people be freaked out? I think they might, but it wouldn't seem alarming if a younger nurse shed a tear. And what does it mean about the body language that we express, the words and our behaviours? What about friendships with parents? Is it okay for us to be friends with parents? What about when they leave the neonatal unit? Are we still allowed to be friends with them? What should I share with parents? Parents ask me if I've got kids. Is it okay for me to tell them about my own kids? And what do I tell my family and my kids? I mean, I've been called in at night time, rushing in to help re-intubate a baby. And when my kids got a bit older, one of the things they wanted to know was if the baby died, then what do I tell them? So I haven't got any answers to any of these questions, but I think these are all very important topics for us as professionals to reflect on. And when we were doing this work, we realised that the parents most of the time were pretty positive about the support that we provided. And I came up with this phrase, it's the little things that count. And this is about us showing humanity in a very scary technical world. And I learned that parents remember how we made them feel years, decades later. I'm in contact with parents of babies who were born more than 25 years ago now. And parents remember exactly how we made them feel. And many parents live with regret. You know, they say, what if I hadn't, you know, gone out and done that 5K jog that I think precipitated labour? You know, what if I hadn't done this? What if I hadn't said to you, you can turn off the ventilator, would my baby still be alive? And parents form this unique bond with staff. They say, look, you knew my baby. And often health professionals might be one of the few people who ever met their baby if the baby dies in the first few hours and days. And parents don't expect us as doctors and nurses to be counsellors or miracle workers, but they do expect that we genuinely care. And how we behave and the language we use has a big impact on whether parents believe that we really care. And so it was during this first study that we really became more aware of the challenges faced where one of a twin pair dies and one survives. Now, most of us are fascinated by twins, the endless kind of nature versus nurture debate. Here are some famous celebrity twins, the Jedward twins, the Olsen twins, Will and Rupert Young. Rupert Young sadly died in 2020. Scarlett and Hunter Johansson, the Van Tullekens, Amal and George Clooney had twins, Beyonce had twins. We're really interested in twins. And this is a really interesting, but in fact very sad documentary that you can actually get on Netflix. And if you haven't watched it, I would strongly recommend you watch it. It's a really well-made documentary, but actually quite disturbing. And this relates to these three boys who were adopted into three different families as part of what I think all of us would now agree was a cruel and unethical experiment. So the triplets were put up to adoption, and this psychological institute deliberately placed one of the twins in a working class family, one in a middle class family, and one in a quite affluent family. They didn't tell the families that they had brothers. And at the age of 19, two of them ended up at the same university, and they realized they were getting mistaken for somebody else, and then they found each other. And then shortly afterwards, the third triplet found these two twins because they were still living in the same area. And for a few years, they were minor celebrities on talk shows and TV programs. But bit by bit, the stress of having lived their childhood without their brothers became a huge mental health burden for them. And at 35 years of age, one of them committed suicide, and the other two have admitted to having long-term mental health issues. I think that just gives you a sense of how challenging it must be to know that you had a brother or sister who was a twin, who you don't get to spend the rest of your life with. And here are 6-year-old girls on an American breakfast TV program who were adopted by two different families from China. The families were promised that they were not twins. I don't know how they found each other, but they brought them back together on daytime TV. I also think this is borderline unethical to do this to the girls like this, but I think you just get a sense of what we would feel knowing that you've grown up without your twin, or that you weren't living with them. And this is probably much more common than we recognize. This is Elvis Presley, Liberace, Andy Garcia, and Jamiroquai. They all had twin brothers or sisters who died at or shortly after birth. I don't know the details, but you can imagine that this may really have impacted on their later life behaviors and thoughts. And twins are everywhere, and sometimes it's fairly obvious. If you walk down a street and you see twins in a buggy like this, a lot of people will stop to look at them and go, oh, you know, isn't that beautiful? Aren't you cute? But as you get older and you walk down the street, how would you know whether any of these people walking down the street were twins or triplets? You would never know. It's possible that some of you listening today are twins, and I would never know that. And there may also be some people here who are called twinless twins. How do we know that anybody here didn't have a brother or sister who died, maybe either as a baby or later on in life? You never wear a badge to say that's what your identity is. And last year, Georgina Rodriguez and Cristiano Ronaldo's twins, one of their twin dies. They had a baby boy and a baby girl, and the baby boy died. But up until that point, the pictures of the pregnancy and the family were all over the internet. And imagine now what it must be like for those surviving siblings to grow up in the public limelight, with the whole world knowing that there was a baby brother there who is no longer with them. And what will they think about that? And as I say, when we talk about baby loss from multiple pregnancy, this might be early miscarriage, it might be a pregnancy following assisted reproductive technology. It may be because there was a twin pregnancy where there was a termination of one twin, for example, with a congenital anomaly, or it may be an unexpected stillbirth of one twin, or most commonly, I think, this might represent or occur as a twin death on the neonatal unit, and certainly that's my most common experience. And all of us might stop to wonder, how do parents cope in the situation? How do our behaviours help or hinder parents in their grief? And how can we as staff best make a difference? And if you lose a twin, what must it feel like when you have to go back to that antenatal clinic after you've had an in utero death? Or what does it feel like to stay on a postnatal ward when you can see other sets of healthy twins? Or you had twins on a NICU in the same room where one baby died? And how on earth do you try and cope with the grief, but at the same time stay positive for the surviving twin? And what happens when you walk down the street and you see other twins in a pushchair? And what's it like when your surviving child, their birthday, the anniversary, the first day at school, when it's just them and not their brother or sister? And then what does that child think as they grow older and they learn their identity as a twin whose brother or sister died shortly after birth? And in all of this, I would emphasize that I think all of us can learn better behaviors and actions. And we need to recognize that the way we do this affects families for the rest of their lives. We don't seem to be able to deal with both grief and joy. We're great at dealing with the grief if there is just one baby that has died, and we're great at being delighted and happy when it all goes fine, but we're not managing the two together very well. So we conducted a qualitative study about 10 years ago now. We did a thematic analysis. We came up with lots of themes. And these are 8 key themes that we turned into the guidelines, because I wanted to focus on themes where I felt we could make a real difference to how we care for these parents. But that's not to say there aren't lots of other aspects here that we could consider. And very briefly, these themes are the importance of identity, the importance of recognizing twin status, the importance of acknowledging the bereavement, supporting the parents emotionally, how we provide appropriate information, the importance of continuity, both with staffing, but also with the information that we provide, the importance of memory making, both physical and emotional, certain logistical aspects such as occupancy and where you place the babies on the NICU, and then preparing parents for going home. And in all of this, one of the kind of themes to hold on to in your head is acknowledgement. And I think one of the things that I've learned over 20 years as a consultant is the importance of acknowledging parents' feelings, concerns, unhappiness. So if there's one takeaway that you would have from the talk today, it's acknowledgement. The nurses would ask, how was your pregnancy with him? They forget about him being a twin and everything like that. They forget about him being a twin. And the mother said, it's not just that they forget, a lot of them didn't even know. And as we were doing the work, we were conducting workshops with parents, and it was a mother in one of the workshops who just suddenly said, a little blue butterfly, just put a butterfly on the cot, and then they know he's a twin, and it solves the problem. And as the mum said it, a light bulb went off in my head. And the next day, we got a parent to draw us this butterfly. We printed it out on a bit of A4 paper. The nurses laminated it. We cut it out in a circle, and we started putting it up on the baby's cots after we spoke to parents. So we were able to do that very quickly. We now have a print company who does this for us. But that really was the inspiration for the steps that followed. So as I say, I'm not taking any credit for coming up with this idea. This was somebody else who came up with the idea. And we made it purple because then you're not distinguishing whether it's blue or pink for a boy and a girl. And here's one of our laminated cutout butterflies. We offered the parents to write the name of the baby who died on it, and we just started sticking it up next to the cot space. And as you'll see then in this picture, you'll see the cot space on the left, that baby was also a surviving twin. And immediately it identifies these twins as having something different about them compared to other babies on the unit. And actually these two parents were able for the first time to recognize that they weren't alone in this journey, and they were able to speak about it with each other. One of the doctors at the time really quite upset me, and she said to me, at least you've still got one. That was one of the worst things that anyone could possibly say. Before you tell a grieving parent to be grateful for the children they have, think about which one of yours you could live without. And this at least phrase, I think, is really important, and it doesn't really just apply to the Butterfly Project. And a lot of what I hope I'm teaching or reinforcing with you today is generic to all of the medicine that we practice. Okay, there's a specific example here of co-twin loss that is the Butterfly Project, but really these are transferable themes to everything that we do in our work. And I would say if you ever find yourself in a professional setting about to say at least, I would just stop it and use a different set of words, because in doing that, the at least bit, you're sort of downplaying the issue. So if people come to you and we've made a drug error, we want to explain to parents, we don't say to parents, well, at least he didn't have a convulsion, or at least it didn't affect him. That doesn't help. So as I say, a take home here is never use the word at least unless you've really, really thought through what that might make that parent feel. Providing emotional support, really important. Here's a mum saying to the people who are organising the funeral, it was just a bit matter of fact to other people. Like other people didn't seem to recognise that this was the worst thing that had ever happened to her. One of the nurses that was least thoughtful kept calling him, the surviving twin, by his brother's name. And actually writing the name on the cot card helped all of us remember the name of the twin who died. And the process of writing it, because we offer parents to write it, and we give them a pen, which obviously doesn't wipe off if you have that in the incubator and it all gets a bit humid. The process, I think, of the parents writing that name and being invited to write that name reinforces that we are acknowledging that there was another baby here. Continuity, really important. It was really good we knew this nurse and we really trusted her. Whereas another parent said, a lot of days it was a new nurse and we had to keep explaining it. Parents find it really painful to retell these difficult stories. They want to talk about it, but I think quite reasonably they expect that we as staff know the details. I should know, if there was a twin, when did that twin die? Was this a miscarriage, a stillbirth, a neonatal death? How old were they when it happened? What was the reasoning behind it? Was this a baby who'd been sick for a long time, or did it suddenly happen? Maybe it happened in a different hospital before they got transferred. But parents expect that we know the medical details. So learn the names of all the babies here and offer to talk about it if they want. They're not obliged, obviously, to talk about it, but don't expect them to tell us the facts of what happened. And give them a sense of continuity. Are they going to see you again? This applies to medics and nurses. And I would often see parents at the end of my week on service, and I would say to them, well, I'm just letting you know, I'm off the next few days. Dr. Smith is in charge, but I'll be back again on Friday. And that's really important. Parents do start to form this bond with us, and they really trust some of us, and they may not trust others of us very much. The nurses did it. They took footprints and handprints. I find it difficult to look at them, but I'm pleased that they did it. I've got pictures. It's nice to see that it was both of them together in the incubator. Now, when you have twins, parents really appreciate any memories you can make of both twins being in the same place. That's why the in utero ultrasounds are so important. But if there's any possibility of putting the twins together in the same incubator, or having mum cuddle them both together, or even if they're really sick, getting mum to sit between the two incubators, between the two ventilators, and have a hand on both twins at the same time, anything that you can do to form some sort of physical connection that you can capture is really important to these parents. Many of you on the call will have much more experience than I do about memory making. But the point here, I think, is to really think, how might memory making differ in the context of twins? And why do we wait until the baby is entering palliative care and we think the baby is going to die before we suddenly start doing this rush of memory making? Why don't we start memory making right from the very beginning? It was not nice putting us on a ward with lots of parents and other twins. One thing which I did find difficult, I was put next to a lot of twins. It was really hard, but it has to be done. So obviously, if you've had twins and one twin has died, being put on a postnatal ward next to other twins is going to be pretty challenging. When a twin dies on a neonatal unit and they've been in the same room or bay together, parents have to come in and find the bed space where their baby might now be empty. And then very soon after, that's going to be filled by another baby. And the parents of that newly admitted baby will have no idea what's just happened. And what will that parent think when they come into that room and they no longer see the other twin in that cot space? They see another baby, perhaps a healthy baby. That must be really hard. So there are lots of ways in which you can handle that. I think explain to parents that you understand that might be incredibly difficult. We now offer parents moving the surviving baby if they want to a different room. But most often now, parents, if they're off the choice, ask to have their surviving baby moved into the cot space of the baby who died, perhaps in some way to protect that memory a bit longer, or just to avoid having to deal with somebody else being in that cot space. Parents realise we're busy. They realise we never have any empty cots for more than a few hours. But just offering parents to talk about that and explain it really means a lot to the parents. It was horrible going home. When I had to go home, that was really hard. I thought it would get better when I got home, but it actually got a lot worse. I think we see discharge as the aim of neonatal intensive care. Like, this is the point where we've done our job well and the baby can go home. But I think we can easily forget how stressful this is for parents. If they're leaving a baby who died, that baby might still be in the mortuary. Maybe it hasn't had its funeral yet. They're leaving behind the space that is attached to all the memories they have ever had of that baby. So again, acknowledging that going home can be really challenging, tricky and upsetting for some parents is really important, and thinking through with them ahead of time where they might get their support or what else we could do. Perhaps make sure the GP and the health visitor really know that this is a surviving twin baby. These things can make a big difference. So there are lots of themes, and I think all of us can do better. We have a lifelong impact on parents' experience. As I say, 25 years later, I meet parents who tell me they remember exactly how we made them feel. Small things really can make a big difference. And the project is really much more about how we interact, behave and talk to parents. This isn't just about picking up a butterfly symbol and sticking it on the incubator. That's not what it's about. It's about us understanding the words that we use, our behaviours, our facial expressions and body language on the ward rounds, that little wrinkle, the furrow of the brow when you're not happy. The words we use, always had a bad gas, always had a bad night, or he's been misbehaving, or whatever. Think carefully about the words we use and how that might make parents feel. And it also should make us think about how we interact with each other. How do we look after each other during these difficult times? How do we interact with parents? How do we interact with our families and friends when we go home? How do we offload? How much are we allowed to talk about and share? So these are the 8 themes. You can go and read the papers, you can go to the website and get these. I'm not going to go through these in great detail again, but we were able to develop guidelines that we've now translated into about 15 different languages, and we share these freely on our website. I was struck by actually hearing the parents speak, and when I present like this and I read out their words, it never really cuts it. So we were able to get funding to make some films. We did this with 8 further families and some staff. We shot hours and hours of footage. And we've developed this website that is freely accessible, neonatalbutterflyproject.org. And here we group the themes and we provide some short videos and information about the themes. And then, as I say, you can go and download guidelines in different languages and a few leaflets. I haven't really updated these in the last couple of years, but I will be doing that shortly. And so if you go to the website, as I say, there are different aspects to the website with resources and some more parent stories. It's been shared around the world tens of thousands of times. And the butterfly symbol worked really well. Parents commissioned artwork, parents have had butterfly tattoos. We made little butterfly badges that the surviving SIBs put on their school bags and take to school. Parents have took kids to butterfly farms, released butterflies on their birthdays. I couldn't have done any of this without the families who helped both do the research and took part in the films. I can't believe how difficult it must have been to retell these difficult stories. But as I say, without them, I don't think we would have the project that we do. And we were able to take those films and turn it into a e-learning course. And as I say, you can now access for free through the NHS website. This gives you 4 hours of accredited learning. It was endorsed by the Royal Colleges, but they charged me about £500 a year for continuing endorsement, and I haven't got any money. But if you go through the NHS portal, you can now get the course for free, and you can certificate for free now, and it's been widely endorsed by lots of different advocacy organisations. And this is what the course looks like. It's on this platform called FutureLearn. And it's all broken down into short steps. Each step will only take you 5-10 minutes to work through. And, you know, it talks about, you know, how do twin pregnancies occur and when might problems occur. And it's a mix of short articles to read, short videos or short audio sections, and opportunities to interact with other people doing the course. And the feedback's been amazing. I'm genuinely humbled and privileged to have been able to create something that's been so useful. I've done lots and lots of research in my time. I've got hundreds of research publications But honestly, this is the best thing I've done. I would swap all of those for the Butterfly Project, because I think it really has made a difference to how we provide care for parents. And as I say, this is now free for NHS staff. You need to go through this slightly kind of clunky website address, which is verified.leadershipacademy.nhs.uk. I think I've got a QR shot that you can put on your mobile phone. But you can see here on the left the global reach. I think we've had almost now 2,000 people from around the world, from more than I think now 90 different countries take part in it, and you can all share your comments and thoughts in the discussions of it all. So think about being in somebody else's shoes. As I say, this is more than just a COC card. Think about the little things you count. Act as a leader and demonstrate to others, and as I say, acknowledge all of this. So if you've got your mobile phone, you can just take a photo of that QR code, which will then take you through to this NHS Leadership Academy. As I say, it's a little bit clunky, but if you get there, you'll see there's a list of free Future Learn courses with the top one, baby loss from multiple pregnancy. You click on that and it will just take you through, and you have to put in your NHS email address. And then you get an email that you have to click on to verify that it's correct, and then you can get into the course for free and contribute to it. And as I say, you can then submit the certificate for CPD. So as I say, I think I've provided all these comments before. As I say, never underestimate the power you have to make a real difference to these parents. Always being kind. And none of us know what else is going on in those parents' lives, what other stresses they're dealing with. Act as a leader. All of you have joined this course today because you're interested in this thing. And I probably don't have a lot to teach most of you, but it's the people who don't come to these sessions, who don't think they need to do this sort of CPD, who we really need to work on. And all of you need to act as leaders in your neonatal units. And certainly my feeling from doing all of this work is that all of us are good at learning and reflecting, and acknowledging this as an important area really has made my job more rewarding, and I hope the same goes for you. So hopefully I've stopped sharing my screen and happy to take any comments or questions and everything. Michelle, over to you.
Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation, Nick. I'm going to call you Nick, make you feel comfortable.
Please, yeah, feel comfortable then.
So the poll results are in. Hopefully you can all see them. If not, then the first poll shows that the majority of you, so that 62% says that you have the Butterfly Project implemented in your workplace, but its placement can be improved upon. So, and then the other major number statistic is you do have it. There's 28% of you that effectively uses it, which is obviously a great number, but could be improved upon. So hopefully you'll all have gained some insight and ideas from today's session that you'd like to take away and put into place. Fingers crossed. There is a second poll. If you would all like to fill it in between now and closing, that would be much appreciated. And Nick, if you don't mind answering a few questions.
Yeah, delighted.
Great. So the first question we have is, how do you find the Butterfly Project works in practice, and is there any common difficulties that you have experienced?
Yep, thank you. On the neonatal unit, it works great. I mean, the nurses, all the staff know about it. Everybody knows what the Butterfly COC card represents. The nurses will sit down and speak to parents quietly, one-to-one, explain, briefly what the Butterfly Project's about, ask parents whether they would like a COC card and to write the name on it, and that kind of initiates the process. That bit works really well. In the last 6-7 years, I only know of one family that declined it. This was a triplet pregnancy where one triplet died, I think, around about 18 weeks. And the parents in their own mind decided they wanted to think about this now as a twin pregnancy. Of course, that's fine. They didn't want to treat the twins as any different, so they didn't take a butterfly cock card. But that's the only family I'm aware of. But of course, like, we need to recognise everybody's an individual, and whilst I think this might be lovely if I was in the situation, it doesn't mean that that's true for everybody else. And parents also have to know that as soon as you put a butterfly on the incubator, then you might get other parents in the room or staff coming along and saying, oh, what does that mean? So be prepared for what you might say. But I think from that point of view, it works pretty well. I think I've been muted. Yeah, I keep getting muted. The time when it maybe doesn't work so well is transfers. So I think our transport team know about it. They will tell the receiving hospital, but you might be going back to a hospital out of our region where people don't know really what the Butterfly Project is, and so that might require parents to have to explain what this Butterfly Cock Card represents. I think we had one parent where somebody lost the Butterfly Cock Card in the incubator on the transfer. You know, you can imagine the parents are pretty upset because they didn't want to lose that. You can replace it, but it's never like the first one. People forget when they come back to a follow-up paediatric clinic. So the paediatrician, the developmental paediatrician, might not ever have read the notes in great detail, might not know there was a twin here. Quite often the GP might know, the health visitor might not know. You can use a butterfly sticker on the handheld records, but if you see a butterfly sticker, if you don't know about the project, you wouldn't necessarily maybe bother to look. I mean, like, it could just be another sticker of an animal. How would you know what it represents? So I think those aspects of, you know, the beyond the NICU are still quite challenging, because although we can all learn about it on the neonatal unit, it's difficult for us to educate thousands of people that they may come into contact with in the health services after that.
Brilliant, thank you. There's a question from Jackie Davidson, who's saying thank you for sharing the insight and how we may sensitively respond, acknowledgement being the key. The learning module is a great extension of this. My question is, how do you access the learning if you do not have an NHS email account? Thank you.
So if you haven't got an NHS email account, you can just go to FutureLearn. So go to the FutureLearn platform. If you just Google FutureLearn, you'll find that platform and look for the course. As I say, I think it's called Loss of a Baby from a Multiple Pregnancy. You register with your email address, and you can do the course for free, but you're limited to 2 weeks of access. So you have to do the first week in the first week, then they'll send you the link to the second week, and you do the second 2 hours in the second week. And then at the end of that, you will lose access. And that's because FutureLearn are a commercial enterprise. They provide great courses, great high quality courses, but somebody has to pay for it. And if you want to register as a partner on the FutureLearn website, it costs you about £30,000 a year, and I have zero funding. So the way that I've done it is FutureLearn, as I say, have this course. They operate it. People can pay to access the course. I think it's £75. So anybody can pay £75 if they want it. If you want it for free, you can do it, but you only get 2 weeks of access, so you can't go back and download the materials or whatever. But I sorted it so that if you go through the NHS link, you can have continued access still. You get the certificate and you don't have to pay the £75.
Brilliant. And then just one more question, which is, how has the project changed you as a neonatologist, and are there any future research endeavours that you've got planned?
I think it really made me kind of sit back and reflect on what I was doing, almost in a kind of existential way. I mean, what is this all about? And you know, we get so focused on the kind of here and now, the nitty gritty, the blood gases and everything else, that we don't always step back and just see what's going on here and what this means to people's lives. And I've become fascinated in watching my colleagues. They may not always realise that I'm watching them, but I'm fascinated in the words that people use and their body languages, You know, when people say, "Oh, he's had a bad night," if you just catch the parents at that point in time, they're crestfallen. So I've become very aware of these aspects. Try and use much more kind of neutral language when you're talking about a baby. Be much more kind of factual. You know, don't say, "Oh, his CO2 is really high." You know, just say, "Well, his CO2 is 10 and it was 7 yesterday," or whatever. You know, don't provide all this emotional overload. The parents are already scared and anxious. Don't make the parents more anxious than they need to be. They're not, you know, parents aren't stupid. They realize that, you know, sick babies don't always make it. And I think sometimes we can be a bit hard, a bit heavy with the language that we use. So it has really changed how I think about it. I think I was always kind and caring, but I don't think I had the insights 20 years ago that I have now. Future projects, well, we've done some work with artists and poets with some families of babies who died, making some short films. We're looking to come back now and speak to the surviving children now they're a bit older, get them to talk about what it feels like to have a brother or sister who died, and how do they make sense of this, better understanding how the families incorporate the identity of the twin who died in their lives. So that's where we're that's the kind of butterfly extension. But then, you know, the other projects that perhaps tie into this would be, you know, creating some online e-learning resources like this with film clips of parents for end-of-life care, doing some work around sharing good practice in memory making, preparing parents for discharge after bereavement, and then also linking up with the group in Chester who were doing work on milk donation after baby loss that some of you may be aware of. I mean, Laura presented this, but I'm going to be working with Laura trying to see whether we could create a short e-learning package, so maybe just a 2-hour package that would give people an idea. So lots more work planned, working with parents using these types of medias and formats.
Brilliant. We have a comment from, hold on, I've lost it. There you go. Oh, from Leanne Forbes, who is asking if it's a possibility to get this placed on our online system, such as BadgerNet, so it can be rather than handheld notes. Is that being looked into?
We've actually spoken to Badger and they've agreed that they're going to look at how they could do this. I don't think it would be automated, but I think that units would have the idea, I think, is that units would be able to identify a surviving baby as being a co-twin survivor, and a butterfly would appear somewhere on their electronic record. I don't quite know how that would work, but we've had those conversations with Badger, and it's supported by BAPM. So hopefully that will happen at some point over the next few months.
Brilliant. That sounds like a great idea. What else have we got? A lot of people are praising you, saying that they really enjoyed your presentation. And the results of the second poll are in, and obviously everybody said that they 100% of people have found this session useful, and it'll develop their professional practice. So well done, Nick. A couple of last comments. So it's all coming in fast. Lorna has said, thank you very much for an informative session. I have had a couple of occasions where families don't want to acknowledge with a butterfly because they feel they don't want a constant reminder of their loss. How do you suggest ensuring staff are still sensitive to the family's pregnancy story, but because of the absence of the butterfly on the cot, there is the risk that either insensitive comments are made or the families keep getting asked about it?
Yeah, Lorna, I mean, I haven't got any kind of greater insight than you might have. I mean, this is just all about good communication, isn't it? And I guess it's about working with parents. I mean, just because you put the butterfly cot card up there doesn't mean you can just all kind of, you know, lounge back and forget about it. I mean, we have to be continually aware that these parents' journey is going to be different. I mean, it's not that it's better or worse than the other parents, but it's different because of this. And so we need to think carefully about how we put this into letters that go to the GPs, but how we communicate it with other hospitals. I think it's also important to sort of help parents think that this is a very difficult topic to communicate and ask them what they would like us to do. And there are no magic answers. I mean, we simply haven't got the time to contact every single health visitor who might look after this baby or NHS professional. I mean, how do I let the ophthalmologist know that this is a surviving twin baby when it's an ophthalmologist in another hospital? So I'm sure all of you can think of ways we can do this. I mean, fundamentally, it's about communication. And yeah, we should be proactive and think about, you know, how differently could we make this kind of idea work. But it shouldn't necessarily be, you know, this isn't specific to the Butterfly Project. You know, I mean, there are lots of issues with these babies that we don't communicate. You know, the families where the mums or dads had a particular incident that really upset them, or some specific aspect of care that, you know, is really, really important. I mean, how do we communicate that when we go home? How do we communicate messages about, you know, parents' mental health? How do we provide the right support after discharge? So as I say, like, the Butterfly Project sort of focuses on what appears to be this kind of very niche area, co-twin loss, but really these are issues that are relevant to every baby that we look after in these situations.
There is a comment from Debbie from Scotland.
Hi, Debbie.
Who is bringing up the fact that in Scotland we do have memory milk. Yep. And was obviously wondering if this is something that you collaborate with.
Yeah. I mean, we'll make sure that we involve everybody in designing it. So definitely Debbie and others, we will kind of take your thoughts, insights into what we would put into a course. I mean, my idea for the Memory Milk Gift would be probably just a 2-hour course. So if you make it too long, then people just won't do it. But it would be difficult to pack it all into 1 hour, I think. So I'm thinking that maybe a 2-hour course, and we would need to, you know, work together and, you know, work out what are the different elements of it. You know, how much do you want to give in terms of theoretical background about baby loss, and then, you know, lactation. So of course there is this BAPM framework. So any of you that don't know about it, if you go to the BAPM website, there's a framework for milk donation after baby loss that you can read, which is, you know, everything that you need to know factually about it. But what I would like to do is just kind of take that on to another step, turn it into an e-learning course so that people can understand how would you speak to parents, to a mother who's suffered a baby loss, either as a stillbirth or a neonatal death. How would you speak to her now about lactation choices? This wouldn't be about promoting that parents should be doing this. It's about giving parents the option to decide whether this is what they want to do. And without providing parents with a choice, how can they make an informed decision? So the start point for this really is about lactation choices after baby loss. And then, as I say, focusing on the Memory Milk Gift, I see the link to the BAPM documents there. So if you're in Scotland, you want to know more about it, read the document and speak to Debbie. As I say, like, you know, it's a kind of separate issue to Butterfly, but really the themes are generic here. You know, before you speak to a mum about milk donation, you need to know what happened, when did it happen, why did it happen, did the baby have a name, you know, how are they going to communicate this, what are their family and friends going to think about it, how would you let the GP know when they go home, get discharged? So these themes are generic. This isn't just co-twin butterfly loss. We should be thinking about all these themes in many other areas of our practice. But for me, Memory Milk Gift, I kind of particularly interested in because it obviously spans my own personal interests of doing the qualitative work with parents on baby loss, but also all of my interests in nutrition and breastfeeding.
Joanna is asking if there's any helpful resources that can be shared with the parents.
Yeah, there is a charity called Sky High Foundation, SKYE, which is the name of the baby. This was set up by Millie, who is the mother of twins, and Sky, her twin, died from anencephaly on day 1 or 2. And she also kind of came up with the butterfly idea around the same time as me. So they're now set up as a charity. They provide hospitals with COC cards and some written guidelines. So you can get in contact with her if you want resource packs. In terms of providing support from parents, I've stayed away from that. I mean, that isn't really my area of expertise, and I didn't want us to sort of take on too much. So for parents who are wanting specific support for their loss, they need to link with local bereavement teams or perhaps with Twins Trust. So Twins Trust is what some people might have known as TAMBA, Twins and Multiple Birth Association. It's now Twins Trust. They have a bereavement group for twins. And so there is support there that families of twins who died and co-twins who died can access. So that's where to go for that information. Or SANS, local SANS groups would know about specific support. So we don't provide parent support. I do know that a lot of parents have accessed our website, and of course they're free to do that. You know, there's nothing secret here. But we, you know, my focus has been on educating health professionals rather than on supporting parents per se.
Nicola has just made a comment saying, I've always had a special interest in providing excellent bereavement care. Your compassion is refreshing. Always important to make somebody's baby, to remember somebody's baby, sorry, and to know their name and their story. I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. I mean, the name is so important. I've been doing quite a lot of podcasting with various advocacy groups. And so recently I've been working with a group of fathers whose partners had a termination for medical reasons. I mean, again, that's a very emotional topic. And all of them named their babies quite early on in the pregnancy, these complicated pregnancies where they thought the baby might die. And naming is so important. And I'm surprised how few people kind of realize that in a way from an antenatal point of view. I often get called around to fetal medicine to speak to parents. The parents being spoken to by fetal medicine experts. I mean, the fetal medicine experts I work with are excellent. That I would happily have them look after me. But I'm surprised how infrequently they've actually bothered to ask the baby's name. And when I go in and I introduce myself as an neonatologist and I say, well, you know, I know you have a baby, they're 18 weeks. Do you mind me asking if they're a boy or a girl? And they say, oh, it's a girl. And I say, oh, she's got a name. They go, oh, yeah, she's called Lucy, whatever. Parents' eyes just light up. It's such an easy thing to do. And you make that connection. They immediately start thinking, oh, you're a pediatrician. You know, you're a normal human being. You've asked about the name. It makes such a difference. And, you know, that's certainly true in the Butterfly Project. The parents really like the idea. They gave their baby a special name and they want to hear that name. They want that name to be used. That doesn't mean it won't be upsetting to have their name mentioned. But we do far worse by trying to pretend that that name never existed. And the same will be true with, you know, Memory Milk Gift. You know, almost all of those babies, even if they were an 18-week stillbirth, had a name. And the parents are offering to donate their milk in memory of that baby. So remembering that name is always really important.
And then one last comment from Julie, who works in transport. Hi, Julie, who says she's going to make it her mission not to ever lose another butterfly card again. Bless her. Great stuff. All right, well, thank you so much for everyone who has attended this afternoon. It's been so interesting to hear you talk again, Nick. I've really appreciated you being here. So yeah, setting aside time, which I'm sure is valuable for you to be with us today.
Yeah, so I'm very and thank you very much again for the invite. I realise you come from lots of different units. If you work with a whole bunch of autistic medics who don't get this stuff, and there are plenty of them around in neonatology because I've met many of them, they won't come to these sessions because they'll think, well, this is just for the nurses. But if you find people that need a bit of arm twisting or whatever, I'm happy to do webinars for your hospital And then you just need to think of an ingenious mechanism to kind of lure the medics into the room, particularly the male medics into the room, lock the door and make them listen to it. As I say, like I'm not what people would describe as a touchy-feely person. I was never, as I said at the start, I'm not interested in people's feelings, but I do realise how important it is, particularly as a man, in what is actually, you know, largely female-dominated world on the NICU, to show that this is important, to show leadership. So if you work with lots of autistic men, particularly, and you need a bit of persuasion, then I'm happy to come and give you or an individual webinar or whatever, just to get them on board. Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.